So I suppose you all had hoped maybe you'd seen the last of me, but no. I'm privileged to host the next panel. Being the insubordinate son of a gun I am, I basically have followed no instructions on how to do this. We have a great group with us today. I'm privileged to direct the Security Studies program, which is a lively research and teaching program here in the department. And for the last few years, for those of you who've been consumers of our annual reports, and by the way, our new one is out, we've focused on a small number of issues. We've focused on the international security in Asia. We've focused on nuclear weapons and what they mean for international politics, a study that I think our group has been in part responsible for resurrecting in this country. We look at civil wars and internal conflict with particular emphasis on the role of identity politics in these civil wars, to include ethnicity and nationalism and religion. And then we do kind of a grab bag, which is the kind of thing I do, and you heard this morning, which is, what does it all mean? How do you pull it together for U.S. national security policy? So I'm pleased to have colleagues, some of whom I've worked with for many years, some of whom I've only worked with for a few years, to give you a flavor of some of the kinds of work on conflict and security that we do here at MIT. And I think all of our key areas of interest are represented. As was pointed out in the earlier introductions, you have wonderful biographies of these people in the schedule that was handed out. So I think that my strong suit is not reading those biographies. I'll just remind you, we have Roger Petersen with us. He's a scholar of comparative politics, very much a student of these ethnic and identity and religious issues. He's PhD, and his other degrees are from the University of Chicago. He's written 3 books that really cover these issues very well. Vipin Narang, associate professor in the department, has written 1 book on nuclear weapons and strategy of new nuclear powers. He's feverishly at work on a second one, I know, because he's in the office next to mine and I can feel the heat, so I know he's feverishly working. Rich Nielsen, assistant professor in the department, been very helpful to the Security Studies program in the time that he's been here in helping us understand the role of jihadi thinking in the Islamic world and the implications for U.S. foreign and defense policy. By the way, Vipin and Rich both have their PhDs from Harvard, so we do not discriminate. And finally, Taylor Fravel, who has basically been keeping us on the straight and narrow about the rise of China. He's written 1 book on Chinese foreign policy. He's well into his second one, so there's a lot of heat in the hall from all this work that's being done. And he has his, if I didn't say so, he has a PhD from Stanford. And I will turn the panel over to these gentlemen so that they can share their work with you.
Yeah, thanks. So I wasn't sure if I was supposed to talk about the subject of emotions in conflict or my own research on the issue or how this relates to the MIT Political Science Department. So I want to try to talk about all 3 of those together. I am one of the few political scientists who work on emotion in conflict. And I guess it's accurate that I'm an innovator on the subject and I was given this title to talk on. I think that's appropriate. But I never set out to study emotions. I certainly didn't want to be known as the emotions guy in conflict studies. And I find it odd that any manuscript with the word emotion in it is sent to me for review, which I don't really find really good. So how did I get here? And I think the answer has to do with the MIT Political Science Department and the values it holds. I think adherence to a certain set of values is likely to lead to innovation. So what are those values? First, we take on big questions and create dependent variables that address an important field of variation. Second, we take the first step of the scientific method very seriously, and that is observation. We stress getting out in the field and into the archives and to intensively know our actors and our subject matter. Third, we do not restrict the range of independent variables to be studied, and we try to specify new mechanisms and identify new hypotheses to be tested. So in my own work, I I studied state formation and the role of violence in that state formation in Eastern Europe over a long period of time in the 20th century. That was a big question. As a noted historian Istvan Diak stated, the establishment of Eastern European nation states has been the most spectacular political change in the European continent in the last 150-odd years, and the only one to prove lasting. So in Eastern Europe, there were three multi-ethnic empires that disintegrated, and then the multinational states of the Soviet Union, Yugoslavia, and Czechoslovakia disintegrated. Even Serbia, Kosovo, and Montenegro split off, and Bosnia remains, but it's really a binational state in all means. In each case, a majority ethnic group in an area, usually based on language, became the basis of a nation state, and in many of these cases, violence played a huge role in the homogenization of peoples. Now, the common approach in the 1990s when I started looking at this was to look at individual cases. Almost always, scholars cited leaders who set off political programs to incite a pliable population. The usual style was to debunk an ancient hatred straw man and then cite outbidding or manipulation as a more plausible alternative explanation. But what about the larger question, this larger field of variation, the big questions that we study here at MIT? What about the outcomes seen in Eastern Europe as a whole? The creation of nation states in one area with a dominant group on top of an ethnic status hierarchy, that didn't happen in some cases. It didn't happen in many cases, or most cases. It happened in every case. So there's something going on, either at a regional systemic level or at an individual psychological level, or both, and that's where my theory was, to explain this broad, important field of variation. So that comes to the second point, which is observation. I don't have time here, but I spent a lot of in-depth experience with Eastern European communities in both the Baltics and the Balkans. And this experience led me to two key observations. One, the people I came to know were neither stupid nor easily manipulated. They didn't fit into these elite manipulation theories. Two, the oft-created dichotomy of ancient hatred versus rational actor was way too simple. What I saw were patterns in the salience of what people cared about, how they collected information, and how they changed beliefs. There were ways that preferences, information collection, and belief formation moved together to sometimes produce a motivation to participate in or tacitly support conflict and violence. And this is where I turned to emotions. I needed to turn to a different type of mechanism, and one that was conceptualized in a way to connect these changes that happen concurrently in preferences, information, and belief formation. Moreover, I was able to develop a theory that could link structural, institutional level changes to the triggering of these individual level emotional mechanisms. The idea about emotion was to explain variation better in this larger field. Third step, new hypotheses. A focus on emotions led to hypotheses not considered in other mainstream works on conflict. To take one example, the most cited work on civil war, which is Leighton and Fearon, both good friends of mine, but it treats grievance in terms of the denial of political equality. But for my combination of field work and knowledge of psychology and emotion, the real grievance was happening in Eastern Europe wasn't about equality. It was that people came to believe in many situations that their group deserved to be on top of a status hierarchy. And when that didn't happen, and when there was a status reversal, there was an emotional change where the preference to put other groups back in their place became salient. It changed the way they collected information. It changed the way they had beliefs under the sway of this emotion. Few political scientists, it seems, are comfortable with even testing hypotheses based on drives to dominate. It's probably unpleasant to do that. But I found this resentment-based hypothesis as the best predictor of violence during ethnic homogenization processes. In sum, I came to study emotions because I followed MIT values. I did work that is problem-driven, not method-driven, with a priority on observation and field research, with broad training and respect for interdisciplinary work, which in turn allows for the specification of new mechanisms and hypotheses. I came to study emotions because they help me address a big problem, because I observed them in the field, because I possessed a broad social science training that allowed me to search for new ways to incorporate what I observed into the field into new hypotheses. If I was able to make any innovation here, it's because I fit the MIT mold. Thank you.